All right, Zig coming in on the top. Today on the show, we have two artists who are incredibly talented and hardworking and happen to be some of the nicest people in the world, Gary and Laura Dumm. Gary is a comics illustrator with a large body of work. He worked for Harvey Pekar for 30 years, illustrating American Splendor and a lot of Harvey's graphic novels, The Beats being one, Students for a Democracy Society being another. Aside from working with Harvey, Gary has done a large amount of graphic novels, two of the most recent being Fire on the Water and Captured, a World War II memoir. Laura Dumm is a pop art painter who, after working for various magazine publications, became a freelance graphic artist, illustrator, and started her own graphic art company, and then retired to become a full-time painter, whilst the whole time collaborating with Gary as a colorist for the comics he was illustrating. Becoming the team supreme that they are, they have also collaborated on projects and shows such as Here Be Monsters, which is a series of large environmental-based paintings using classic horror monsters and science projects gone wrong to illustrate things like water and air pollution, with the hope to educate others about the environmental issues of today. All right, so this conversation takes place at Gary and Laura's house. Joining me once again is Hope Wondowski. And what was so cool was, like, not only did they invite us over to do the interview, as opposed to doing it over the phone, but they invited us over a week early so we can come check out what they're working on. And just kind of gave us a tour of their studio and their process. And we hung out for like 3 or 4 hours, and it was a great time. We just hung out, ate cookies, and talked. And some of the nicest people, right? And afterwards, after this interview, we did the same thing. We hung out for maybe 2 more hours. Both incredibly kind and generous with their time. And we're lucky to have them. We're lucky to have them here in Cleveland. And I think we're lucky to be able to call them friends now after this. So, before we get to this conversation, to let you know what Gary and Laura have going on, the third issue of Snark, which is a comic they've been working on, is coming out soon. Also, if you go to www.dummart.com, you can reach out to Gary and Laura and check out all the projects they've been working on. For any of your visual art needs, you can hit them up. And I highly recommend you do. Now, one thing I've noticed with doing these interviews, and especially with people I've talked to in Cleveland and Ohio, is how DIY-based and make it happen a lot of our people from here are. There's something in the water about developing your own way and being passionate about a project that you fully believe in, that you throw your full self into. And when I talk with Gary and Laura, they emulate that. Their enthusiasm, their joy, their positivity, and their passion is contagious. And when you listen to this interview, I hope that you guys get a bite of that. So, without further ado, last thing I gotta say, if you like what you hear, if you can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool people like Gary and Laura and sharing their insights with you. And without further ado, here's our conversation with Gary and Laura Dumm. So to kind of get into it, I kind of wanted to start with where you guys started getting diving into art and finding yourself through creative endeavors that way. So my first question for Gary, when your mom was on the phone, you started to do what?
I'd watch her because she was doing simultaneously left and right brain operation. Of course, I didn't know that at the time, but she's speaking left brain operation, and she's drawing at the same time little faces. Sometimes she'd draw like the animals, but it was my recognition, or at least asking the question, well, if she can do that, why can't I do it? So I quickly was disabused of that when I realized I was doing more like stick figures. And after, 5 years or plus, maybe even 10, I finally was able to draw the way she could draw.
Yeah.
And I began doing drawings to take them to school to show the other kids. And once you begin getting feedback from your peers, and I was lucky generally it was positive feedback, you start doing more. It also helped that my dad was an alcoholic who, when I was quiet, he didn't bother with me. But when I was doing kid stuff, we'd be pissed off. So I learned if I just sat at the table and drew, he was fine.
Okay. Huh. That is I guess to kind of have, so did you, I guess, do you find at that time kind of growing up, did you find yourself more of an introvert?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Which is kind of like the opposite of where comics go, you know, like, or art in general becomes an
But there
external thing.
was that first step, as I said, of taking the stuff to school.
Right.
And when you start getting that feedback, you can become much less of an introvert because you get some kind of a dialogue going.
There's that acceptance, like, wow, I'm worth something here to someone's aesthetic pleasure somewhere, and like, just like I can do a thing, you know what I mean? Like that's a huge deal.
It's definitely a power. It's a power like music, although not as obvious as music, because you can always take your drawings and keep them in your little file, keep it secret, if you will.
Well, and also like it's with art, it's kind of like, for the most part, it's kind of like a finished product. Right? Like, here's the thing. With music, you can see someone trying to do it or piecing it together in real time. Usually, and you can do that with, visual arts too. But, like, it's kind of like a presented, here's the finished essay.
Well, that did happen later on. When I was a teenager, I had several good friends. And we would all get together generally on my parents' front porch in the summer. And we'd be doing that. Some of us could draw, and we'd draw in front of each other, and others could write. And other than that, it was just sitting around BSing about movies and cars and girls.
I want to put a pin in that. So, Laura, you also had like support from school with your arts, right? You're a second grade teacher.
The story is sort of like Gary's. I did have a father that dabbled in a lot of little things, and he would draw the buffalo on the back of the nickel.
Yeah.
And I always loved to see him draw that buffalo on the back of the nickel. And then he would draw Snow White for me. So these were just things, he was just humoring me. Yeah. But then in school, yes, my fifth grade teacher.
Okay, fifth grade.
She told my mom that I had a great gift for color. And I don't know if that really made me feel good and I looked at color differently from then, or if I really did have a great gift for color. But yeah, this is one thing that I kind of do well today.
So from kind of, was it in between, and you went to a school that was kind of based around arts, right?
No.
No? Okay, I thought that was, maybe I read it wrong.
Oh, my high school.
Okay, all right. So this post fifth grade, after kind of getting that
No, I just
bug.
went to regular schools. And then my high school had a program that they were just starting, and it was called Specialized Art Class. And we had 6 or 7 periods of art a day. We had art history. Then we had a couple of periods, of maybe 3 or 4 of actual drawing or painting or, life drawings or all kinds of stuff like that. And then we had letter and design, which was also kind of neat. And they had this for the 3 years I was in high school. And it was the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders were all in the program together.
Okay.
So once you graduated, you just had more people. And it was great. It was like a college education almost in high school.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That was at West Tech.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is no longer there. And I did, although I still am in contact with my art teacher.
Yeah?
He
Very
still
cool.
does things in
Who is it?
Cleveland. Bill Jean.
Bill Jean? Okay.
Yeah. And I still call him Mr. Jean because that's just, what we did.
It's hard. Like I
It
still
is hard.
keep in touch with some of my old teachers. Like
And he's like, it's just Justin now, man. I'm like, all right, Z, you know, like it's hard. It's
He
hard
always
to, like,
tells me that, it's Bill Jean, Laura, and it's like, no, you're always going to be Mr. Jean. Yeah, so.
And Hope, you kind of had that with drama, right? Your high school.
I went to a vocational high school, but alongside like auto mechanics and welding, there was a performing arts program too.
Welding is kind of a performing art.
Oh yeah.
Especially when you get into TIG welding, it's a whole thing. It's tricky. Anyway.
But yeah, I had my teacher there, Maria Aladrin. She was like, I think she was one of the first people in my life to give me direction. Like, yeah.
And that's kind of where I wanted to take the next step of this is like when you see that you can surround yourself with something you enjoy doing and learning all these parts maybe you don't enjoy, right? Did that kind of make the next step of I want to do art for a living possible?
Well, I always did art, but when it came to choosing what I wanted to do when I grew up, my mother always was, don't do art, Laura, be a secretary.
Yeah.
And of course, I didn't want to be a secretary. I wanted to do art. So that was sort of the discussion that we had up until when I was working for Northern Ohio Live magazine. I got an assignment to do the cover.
Okay.
And I did the cover, and it was, I did probably 3 covers for Northern Ohio Live. And my mom all of a sudden was, oh, this could be a job. So
What was the first cover? Do you remember?
Yeah, I still even have it. It was a summer issue, and it was a sailor on the front, just his face, and it was about things that you could do during the summer.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So going through this type of experience, you could see, I mean, aside from approving it to like a parent, which is always going to be a hard challenge, because they care about everything that's going to happen and where you're going to go. But like going through this type of schooling and kind of surrounding yourself with it did kind of like show that it could be a thing.
Yeah, and then I would do summer classes at...
Teach or take?
Take.
Okay.
Like when I was still in school and things,
Right.
they had some summer classes at the Cleveland Museum, and then they had one... Cooper, yes, School of Art downtown. And, just always dabbling in that. So I just was, I'm going to be an artist. And that was that.
Yeah. Was it, and painting was always the medium, or was there like a medium
No,
for...
I did everything, and it changed all the time.
Yeah.
I didn't want to. I finally got to the point where I went, I'm glad I didn't go to college, because they would have made me have a style.
Right.
They would have directed me to have a style. And I just had so much fun investigating different ways of doing art. Sometimes painting furniture, sometimes pen and ink, and sometimes just color pencil, and then paint. And
Well, it's like it's the way of no way, right? The Bruce Lee thing.
yeah, I mean,
Like-
it was fun.
Yeah.
was-
Well,
it was fun.
that being the most important part, right?
Yeah.
And to always have that kind of ever, like, never scratchable itch.
Yeah.
To like have like all these. That's cool.
Yeah.
And it's interesting with like kind of like a college approach, like going through a program like that. And there's nothing wrong with a college approach, but there is that kind of like, at least in the visual arts, you have to have a major, or what your medium is to push through. And I know like same with music, it was the same way. You had to like, what are you going to do? You're going to do this or you're going to do that? And like when you have to get through it, you're like, oh, I really like that one class I only had to take one of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to have that kind of flexible thing that's really cool.
Well, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
Because every different thing you do you come across a whole new set of problems that you have to figure out.
Right.
So it's all a learning, you know,
Yeah.
and a fun learning thing.
Yeah.
And
it's
I like having fun.
And what's interesting too is like I notice like I have friends, and I'll compare it to how I understand with music. Like I have friends who went through music programming, right? And they have a very like kind of fixated goal of what they're going to do post, right? Or an expectation of what they're going to do, and like a very like interesting way of reaching that goalpost, right? And now meet someone who's like a guy who's just in their basement, teaching lessons and doing it all on their own, and they have like it's an interesting, like they have a bigger appreciation and more in-depth kind of, and this is this is what I experienced, definitely not everyone's experience, but a more like in-depth look on some of the little steps compared to like the destination.
Yeah.
And like I think it's interesting, you'll hear a guy who talks about like, yeah, those minor thirds are really important. And then in college, there's like, okay, minor thirds, you know what? Okay, next thing. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of, did you find that, either of you guys, with like kind of taking art on your own, like processing, like that maybe other artists don't really kind of dive into is like in-depthly, that you're like, no, it's really cool when you sketch it out like this, or like,
I'm just going to say one thing and then he can take it.
Okay.
We are so opposite in the things that we do.
Right. So we'll get to that.
We just fill in each other's blanks, you know, and take it away, Gare.
I just took as much art as I could. I went to Cuyahoga Community College, and I had what I thought were good teachers. The problematic part was, after I got out of college, I still wanted to do comics, and I started doing silk screening. And I had one of my silk screens in a place, and one of those teachers came by, and he goes, well, this is okay, but why are you going to waste your time on doing stuff like comic books? I felt a little bit let down.
Yeah.
Because as a teacher, I thought he was a good teacher. But as a commenter on the artwork itself, when I wasn't getting a grade on it, it was a bit of a letdown. But it didn't dissuade me in any way.
Was that David Arberman or Gerald Kramer?
Well, do I have to name names?
No, you don't.
Good.
It was one of them.
It was one of them. But that was a point. So to kind of pick up where you left off, you're drawing on the porch, right? And like just kind of messing around with friends, having fun with it. When is it after, I guess, like after high school that you knew you wanted to go study it more in-depthly in college? Or was it kind of a path that just opened up?
It was kind of a path that just opened up. Also, the fact was that I wasn't going to have to go anywhere and spend X amount of dollars for some kind of an education. And I do not fault Tri-C for the kind of education I got in getting a 2-year associate's degree. Not at all.
I did that same thing. I got associates from Tri-C. Go pro Tri-C.
Shout out.
Shout out Tri-C. With like silk screening, does that have anything to? Did you notice like a trade-off with like inking in silk screening?
Well, not really. I got into silk screening because my mom said, you ought to get a job.
Yeah.
And so I found a job. It was in a print shop. They did all kinds of offset printing, and I learned to silk screen because they also did the kind of paper banners that used to hang in grocery store windows. So that was my introduction to silk screening. And frankly, after I did that for a while, I hated silk screening. First of all, because of the smell and what it did to me health-wise. I didn't have any appetite because of inhaling the fumes.
Right.
But later on, once getting together with Laura, I thought, look, I know how to do this. now I can do it to do our stuff.
Gotcha.
And we did,
Okay. Okay.
including that one. It's right over there.
The skull.
did.
Yeah, the flaming
Yeah.
skull.
Yeah, we did quite a few silk screens, and one just showed up that a friend bought ages ago
Yeah.
on Facebook. You know, he's doing, which is nice because he's doing artist every day, and he's putting
that's
up
cool.
one piece of their work. And one of the silk screens showed up, and I'm like, whoa,
Haven't seen that in a while.
yeah.
So I guess where to kind of build off that, when and where did you guys meet?
We met at a party.
Okay.
And I didn't know. He just, maybe it was that he worked at that silkscreen place and he just was like 118 pounds or something, you know.
It had this aroma.
No, he just
Thinking
was,
of it wafting off me.
he
It's
just
not
was,
pheromones, it's silk screening.
he was just so arty looking, you know.
Yeah.
He just looked like an artist. And he was an artist, and then he was like cool and everything, and I was hooked.
Okay. Okay. Very cool.
At that time, I was still doing a good amount of painting.
Yeah,
which
you were.
I haven't done for a while because of getting into doing comics.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So from doing silk printing to painting, and like you guys meet at this party, and then you guys kind of hit it off? Does it take off, or does it take a
Oh, it
couple
took
weird?
off.
Okay. Couple.
It took off, and that was when I turned 18.
Yeah.
I wanted out of the house, so you know we had an apartment on the east side,
Okay.
and he was in the same apartment, a couple floors up or down, I forget. Anyway, and then that summer, I think this was 70. We moved out into our own apartment,
Yeah.
and then 71 we got married.
All right.
So it was boom,
yeah.
boom, boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you guys did you start working on stuff together, like silk printing, or was this later? And
The
you
silk
guys were
screening
kind
we did.
Yeah, we did start doing silk screening in that first apartment.
But pretty much.
It was very primitive. It was just on a regular table with a small silk screen setup. And then later bought the kind of professional setup that I've been doing in the print shop,
Gotcha.
which was down the basement here.
Yeah.
That's where we did larger stuff like that.
Okay. Okay.
No, because the Popeye print, that was about that size. And that was done at the apartment. Not to tell
Just
you
not
wrong,
as
but-
big as that.
Okay. Seemed like it was. And that was the one print that got into the May show that year, which was fun.
So, like, at this point, do you have kind of a sense of the artist you guys wanted
yeah.
to be at that point? Like,
Oh,
you
yeah.
kind of
Well,
had
we
a
were
direction,
artists,
right?
you know.
But did you have okay, I kind of want to shoot down this? Were comics coming to you at that point, or were you still silk?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
it was both.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think then that's when I started working for, like, places that did magazines or, Shopper's Guide, I think, was one place I worked. And so it was all kind of going toward, I can work in a place and do art.
Yeah.
And then I was learning things like typing machines.
Yeah.
And the typography machines, and what do they call those?
Well, the earlier ones were linotype machines,
Yeah.
but I don't think you ever worked on
No.
that.
No, and then and he was working at part-time at
Case?
bookstores,
Yeah, I worked
Yeah.
part-time at Kay's.
and that one happened because I, like your mother, said, I think maybe you should get a job.
It's a strange echo.
Yeah, well, he was definitely living the hippie life, which was cool.
So, okay, so you got, because as like two people who are trying to do their own thing, like, and with a similar like visual component, I can see like maybe like I don't get this vibe from you guys at all, but some people get kind of hung up when someone else is doing better. Like, you know what I mean? Was there ever kind of like, you guys, I from meeting you guys, I get nothing but you guys support each other and like, but
and we
when
fill in the cracks.
Right.
You know, we fill in what the other one can't do.
Right.
So we really needed each other.
And was that something that kind of came clear right away while you were living, like developing the relationship and kind of working relationships?
That's a good question.
I don't know. I think as to that, it's probably more in retrospect.
Gotcha.
Because a lot of times when you're in the midst of something happening, you don't see it as clearly.
Right.
I think that we were kind of working just on stuff. You know, then when we moved into this house, which was 74-ish or something like that, then we both got we could both have our own studio.
Okay.
You know, mine was on one side of the house, his was on the other side of the house. So, you know.
I get a lot of exercise.
Yeah. And then maybe things started, because that's when I was working at Live Magazine, and you were working at
I would
Collector's
mainly
Warehouse?
come into Live because by being at Gay's bookstore, I met a lawyer named Sheldon Jaffrey, who was a big collector of books. He had a large collection of Arkham House books, you know, works by H.P. Lovecraft and folks like that, Robert E. Howard. And because one thing that I got good at, getting past being an introvert, I got good at, hey, look what I've been working on.
Hey. Yeah.
So I would show almost anybody.
Yeah.
And it happened that he had a connection with Bowling Green Popular Press that put out all kinds of books, all kinds of subjects. Some of them were actually theses that people had done about various kinds of literature and pop culture. And he goes, I'm writing a book that's about Arkham House. Would you be willing to try to do the cover? I said, sure. So that was the beginning of like a 20-plus year association with them. And I brought Laura into doing that.
That might have been the first.
And another collaborator of mine in comics, Greg Budget, he and I did some covers. And then later, another collaborator on American Splendor, Joe Zabel, I brought him in to do covers. And then even later, I had been teaching at Virginia Marty College, and some of the students, I brought some of them in to do covers.
Awesome.
So it's funny the connections that you make and how they develop, broaden, and unfortunately, in terms of a publisher, unfortunately end.
Yeah.
I think that is the first time when we did start actually working on projects together, because
we did a little bit of it on American Splendor with doing the color overlays.
right. But I mean, you know, for all of the book covers that we did for Bowling Green,
Right.
that was sort of a job that we both worked on. But now, was Bowling Green, were we doing that after the computer came in? Because the computer thing was another big
Yes.
thing as to where now you're really working.
Yeah.
Yes, but your connection at Northern Ohio Live allowed me to come in and shoot photostats of artwork to be used for those covers.
Because that was nice having that, And, well, then from there,
Yeah.
it was, I wanted to be the art director at Northern Ohio Live. I went into the boss,
Yeah.
and he said, you can't do that. I said, yeah, I can. he goes, no, you can't. And I says, well, then I quit.
Yeah, the only part you didn't get was there was an opening for an art
Oh, yeah.
director. She didn't just come in cold.
But I was
Yeah.
art directing a whole,
Already.
for him,
Yeah.
you know. But so then I had a computer, and so then I could start my own graphic arts business.
Gotcha. But also from seeing how it worked there and taking it on your own.
It's all, yeah, and I
Yeah.
am so glad because we learned as we went, you know.
Right.
And Andy Warhol had a great saying: don't say no to any job. If you don't know how to do it, go home, learn how to do it, and do it. And that stuck in my head, and
Yeah.
it just was, if you have a whole lot of different jobs, that's a whole lot of different things to do, and it's
Right.
never boring. It's not like nothing against factories because we need them, but it's
Right.
not, you know, this is like a really cool job here, and then you get a really cool job there, and I got to work with the Cleveland Police Memorial Society,
Yeah.
who was like my main, client,
Yeah.
and that was interesting too.
Well, what a cool way to like take in so many different aspects of life and be able to funnel it through your skill set, and like how you like, and also kind of go into the mixed medium of having like a bunch of different things you enjoy to create with. Like it's kind of like the perfect gig for that to blossom. Like,
But I think too, then it was I was doing the graphic arts.
Yeah.
But then I was painting.
Right.
That was pretty much all I was, except for working whenever he needed me.
so the computer brought a whole bunch of options.
A whole bunch of
Right.
new options. And we could work at home. I could work in my pajamas.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And, sometimes it'd be you're working still at 11 o'clock at night
Right.
to get something done for the next morning. But it was good because it paid the bills until 2008.
It's all about possibilities and increasing possibilities. We ended up, of course, with the association with Harvey Pekar on American Splendor, getting all kinds of different jobs
Yeah.
because of that.
Oh, Harvey was, Harvey took care of his people. He would take care of Gary, and when he got a good job,
Yeah.
he brought Gary in. When he had a job that really didn't pay very well, he didn't tell Gary about it. And Gary one time asked him,
Harvey had this is towards the end.
Yeah.
In the last few years of Harvey's life, he had an online association with some folks, and I stumbled across it online. Here's Harvey's face, and what's this about? And I look and I see he's doing stories online, etc. So one time when I'm talking to him after that, I said, Harv, what's going on? Why haven't you included me in any of this? And he goes, well, man, I would if it paid any kind of bread, but it don't pay nothing.
he was looking out for,
Yeah.
But then the primo jobs, like
When they were
entertainment,
making the movie and entertainment
Yeah.
we
weekly.
did all the publicity for that.
Yeah.
And
Almost all, but a lot. The lion's share, certainly.
and a lot of national magazines would pick up stuff like that.
And international
Yeah.
stuff for Germany,
Yeah.
Japan, anything that was coming to the table promoting the movie. It was a great time. Harvey did ask at the beginning. He goes, look, from what they're telling me, there's going to be a load of work coming promoting this book. So do you think you can do it? And I said, is there going to be color work? He said, oh yeah. I said, that's even better because Laura can do that. So I could then just concentrate on doing the black and white part of it, and she could concentrate on doing the color.
And then we got the job that wanted you to do a lot of to do the book.
Harvey got a contract with Valentine Books, a 5-book contract.
Yeah.
And one of the I don't know how they fit this into the contract. Honestly, I do not. It was the adaptation of a movie that was going to be coming out soon entitled A Scanner Darkly by the science fiction author Philip K. Dick. And it was a favorite book of mine.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. So I'm going, well, what are you going to do on this, Harvey? I don't get it.
Wasn't this a stop animation thing?
Yes. He says this is an adaptation of the movie where you will take frame blow-ups from the movie and put it back together like a comic book, but it's of the movie. I said, this sounds pretty good. All they wanted Harvey to do was write connective blurbs that would help the continuity of making whenever the characters didn't say enough to elucidate, like a passage of time or something like that. He goes, that's all I gotta do is just do this fill-in stuff. But we ended up getting to put the whole thing together.
Yeah.
So it was really a plum job because I was going to have to hand letter all of that sort of stuff as well as whatever dialogue was on the page. And I quickly came to the conclusion if there were going to be rewrites or anything like that,
Yeah.
it was going to get expensive. So we put that to the folks, the powers that be, and they said, well, instead of doing hand lettering, what if we have your hand lettering made into an electronic font?
Yeah.
And we said, yeah.
Yeah.
Which then even brought me more into the whole thing
Right.
because I was the computer girl also.
Yeah.
So, he didn't learn that but I really wanted to learn that computer.
And ultimately, it's paid such incredible dividends because it saves me time.
Right.
I don't have to hand letter anymore because it is me hand lettering, sort of. And because of that, it's ended up getting more jobs.
Yeah.
And so it was really a win-win on something that at first I didn't understand why Harvey was involved at all.
Right. It's crazy what his name pops up on.
I'm
But the kind of where you met Harvey first? How Harvey come into your guys'
Oh, that's
lives?
a good story. I had a friend who worked at the
VA.
VA hospital where Harvey worked. And he was delivering mail.
She was a social worker.
Yeah, he was delivering mail to their specific offices. And she had bought the Popeye print, silkscreen,
okay.
going all the way back to
Yeah.
then. The silkscreen print that that was in the May show, hanging on her wall. And Harvey comes in and he goes, hey, does this guy know how to draw anything else besides Popeye? And she said, oh, yeah, he's a really good artist, and she talked Gary up.
Yeah.
And she says, do you want me to introduce you? Boom, the rest is
Wow.
history, So they got together and, yeah.
And I liked what Ari was trying to do. I mean, it's not that other comics writers and or artists hadn't done autobiographical comics before. I mean, Will Eisner certainly, and Jack Kirby also with his early life stuff. But Harvey was doing it in almost, I felt, a reportorial, an almost journalistic fashion. He was putting the meat, if you will, of his life on the page. If he did something good, it's there. If he did something stupid or shitty, it's there. I have to stop for a moment and say there were several times when I had either heard of or directly viewed things that went on in his family life.
Yeah.
But I said, why don't you do that? He goes, No, I can't do that. Because there would be repercussions.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, Harvey was, I think, absolutely truthful in the kind of stuff that he put on the page.
Well, and he just chose not to do some things that maybe would bring other people.
Yeah,
You know,
embarrassment.
he didn't
etc.
care though if it was him doing something stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, I always appreciated that saying Harvey puts the good in the bad.
Yeah.
You know, and that's being a true artist, I think.
And he was the one who did it year after year for over 30 years. Whereas Eisner and Kirby, as great as, undeniably great as both of them were, they did not do that.
Yeah.
And he was dedicated to he worked all year long to make enough money. There was no GoFundMe's back then.
Right.
You know, to make enough money to put out his one love, you know. So I think that was also kind of cool.
Yeah, especially sacrificing parts of his jazz and blues record collection in order to fund it.
Was it that it is that type of dedication is infectious, you know? And from the story you guys built up so far, it seems like you guys kind of shared that drive.
Oh,
Right? And to
Yeah.
see someone who's completely doing their own thing the way they want to do it and honestly want to do it, I can see why that connection was so impactful for you guys, as opposed to, as well as to like all these awesome, cool gigs that we can get behind, but also just like the intent of all three of you guys.
well, and it's nice to be, to have, it's nice to have, dedicated, creative people around you all the time.
Right.
Because you don't have time to like feel sorry for yourself or anything. You just keep going. And that was quite fun.
Yeah, feeling sorry for oneself is not a path that I go down.
Wise words.
Well, sometimes it was hard getting an art show, but,
Well, that's a whole nother monster.
That's a whole-
That's
yeah.
a whole nother monster. That's like a bunch of
but we still kept going, you know.
Yeah. Okay, so when you start working with Harvey, and is it initially just with American Splendor?
Well, interestingly enough, there's a comic, an underground, I guess you'd call it, entitled Flaming Baloney,
Okay.
that I did with Jim Blevins and Dennis Janke. And it came out like 3 months before the first issue of American Splendor. And both of those guys were into comics. But Dennis, the story he did in Flaming Baloney, he did in ballpoint pen.
Wow.
And just creating tones of gray with a ballpoint pen. Monster stuff. He later went on, he moved to the Eastern Seaboard, and he worked at D.C. for a good while. And Jim Blevins was a teacher. He went the opposite way out to the Northwest and was a teacher, but while he was in Cleveland, he was doing wood sculptures that were really incredible.
So that was the initial, was working on that. Then, like,
And almost simultaneously
Okay,
was
okay.
American Splendor, yeah.
gotcha. So, but it was initially that gig, Harvey's gig with that, right? And were you inking or drawing initially first?
Both.
Both? Okay.
I was generally inking Greg Budget stuff and doing stuff on my own.
Well, and a lot of times if the story called for a big buxom woman, then you would always give those jobs to Greg Budget.
Yeah, Greg. Greg was and is into pin-up art. I'm not saying I'm not, but he was too pushing the bounds of reality,
Yeah.
shall we say.
So picture Harvey and Greg Budget working on the same book.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of humorous. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
And Greg did try to do things like that
Yeah.
in American Splendor with little or no success. Harvey would generally shoot that down.
So I read that Harvey, he really liked working with you because you're on time, you're dependable, you're punctual. Is that like, I mean, you guys just kind of strike that as characters to me, but like, is this a skills sets that you developed through doing all these projects beforehand? Or was it kind of something that like, this was such a inspiring, like kind of guy to be working with? Like this was kind of on top of my brain. Here it is. Like on top of the pile.
I think that that's just our nature, both of
Yeah,
us.
I think so.
We're,
good
we're
nature to
both
have.
driven, yeah.
But I think you could add maybe another layer on top of that for Harvey,
Okay.
particularly after working with him for a few years. I mean, 30 plus years, it got to the point towards the end, working with Harvey, that he would even say, look, if you want to make an edit or two here, go ahead.
So, in like, that was kind of, he would give you a drawing with stick figures and all the dialogue, right?
Print it out,
Yeah.
block letters.
Yeah.
With a little balloon drawn around it. And then sometimes it wouldn't be a stick figure. If he wanted me to do a close-up, it'd just be a smiley face.
So, okay, so taking that, like, before doing the gig with Harvey, were you doing projects kind of like that where other people gave you, like, basically that type of, like, blueprint?
I wish there would have been somebody like that. I would, prior to that, try to work on projects of my own. And frankly, I have to admit, for whatever reason, I didn't have the stick-to-itiveness to actually finish them. Like if it was something that I was trying to, there's a 5-page story, I'd get two pages into it, and then something else would get my attention.
Gotcha.
I think Gary is a great collaborator.
Gotcha.
I think he enjoys doing projects with other people.
Okay.
And maybe that's also why we work so well. It's because Gary really does like collaboration.
And I think that kind of arises out of, I've always also enjoyed seeing other artists' work. I mean, it's, I'm still hungry to see new stuff, to see something that I haven't seen before, maybe something I can steal if it's good enough.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way it is with writing and musicians, everybody.
100%. 100%. We're all looking at little bits and re-examining what we do to put it out. And I would also imagine, like, kind of going back to, like, that kind of initial hanging out on the porch, working on stuff together, like that kind of collab, like just doing it in that sense kind of brings a more momentum behind it. I
just want to bring up one thing, or two things, about the porch thing.
All right, back to the porch.
Yeah. Gary used to also get a lot of oohs and ahs from girls about his artwork, so that was probably a good thing. But back in, and I don't know what the date is, they had, we had, it was called Grovewood Boys.
Okay.
Grovewood. Yeah. And it was all the guys who used to sit on the porch with Gary and draw or write or
Just BS.
yeah. And they all, poetry and things, they all had a show on what was the art gallery?
Waterloo.
On Waterloo. And it was really kind of fun because all the people were there. Two of them are no longer with us.
Yeah,
so it was really
Randall Tiedemann, the painter, who passed away,
5 or
10
6
years ago
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And Bob Geminer and Steve Verba and Jan Sikorsky. And we remained friends all of these years, but as Laura says, the only ones left are myself and Jan.
Yeah. But it was a neat show. It was all of their work new and the work that they had that was
And
older.
Laura was one of the Grovewood boys.
I got to
honorary.
know. Honorary.
Honorary onto the stoop.
It was a neat show. Yeah.
That's a really cool, like, what a really cool, like, special way to kind of recap that. Like,
Just gets kind of mixed up. And the other great thing about being old artists is that we have got friends all different ages.
yeah.
And so then you don't lose, you don't get stuck in, like just your age group thing.
Right.
Like we're learning things from you guys and, all of the other, which I lovingly call the young punks, because it's nice having people that are all different, everything, all different.
Right. Well, it's so that makes the collaboration like kind of drive make more sense, right? Because like coming from doing this in a group and kind of, even though being introverted, but kind of like vibing off extroverted ideas and like seeing like there's like as a unit, I feel like you can get way more done because it's not only your belief but someone else's, and like the fact that someone can get behind your idea, that's a powerful like motivator.
Having any kind of a support system like that, I think, is invaluable to any creative person. Because aside from music, although not exclusively, most of these artistic pursuits are solitary.
Yeah.
And, you have to look for places to get your feedback if you want feedback.
Right. That's a whole nother thing. Willingness to accept and learn and grow from someone else's input or ignoring of someone else's input.
Well, it's having the confidence enough to ask for the feedback, then examining the feedback and plucking out those bits of value that come with most people's gas that they're sending at you.
Yeah. To kind of I want to put a pin in the Harvey Pekar and move on to a side subject on the concept of bands. Yeah. So I'm trying to remember. His lips curl just like
Elvis.
And he plays the guitar just like
Elvis.
That song is so good.
It's awesome.
It's such a cool
It's so
song.
good.
Like,
Well, thanks to Craig Robertson, because I didn't write it.
I know, but you're playing bass on
Played
it, and I
bass,
think
yeah.
singing on it.
And I love the bass line. I love it. It's so much fun.
So, can we talk a little bit about rapid eye movement
Sure.
when that falls into everything?
Well, it's just not passing up another opportunity,
Yeah.
Met a friend in a bar, and he looked and said, "Laura, do you want to learn how to play the bass and be in a band?" Pfft, yeah, I don't care. That sounds good.
Were you?
I think there was some beer involved, but I'm not sure.
When you're in a band, there's always beer involved.
When you're in a bar, there's always beer involved.
Yeah. So
Were you? This is Craig, right?
Yeah.
Your friend. And were you aware of his music? Did
Oh,
you know
yeah.
he played? Okay, so were you a fan? Were you into it?
Oh
Okay.
yeah. And he's also an artist,
Okay.
and he is very talented.
We did silk screens with him, too.
Okay. All right.
And he wrote very good songs,
Yeah.
that were just like Elvis.
Yeah.
But and his girlfriend at the time was our drummer,
Okay.
so that was kind of one big happy family there.
I was the roadie.
So he asked you if you want to play bass, and just like everything, it's like yes, and then. So do you get a bass the next day? Like, are you playing in the band the next day?
Pretty soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, well, since we had the house,
Yeah.
we had the practice area.
Yeah,
up
you
there. And I had the car, so we had our transportation for
tell
all
me
of
about
yeah,
I just realized she had the roadie, too.
yeah. I had, no wonder he wanted me in that band, So, but the only thing is like I learned to play the bass just by which song it was and what fingers I had to put there. I didn't know how to play the bass, but it was fun,
Right.
And it was different, and it was something to do. I don't know. It was
Well, also to kind of get more to take in, to put out, right? Like through any medium that's creative, you're always taking in experiences to put them out in a different way, even if it's just for yourself. So
And Andy Warhol said, "Don't say no to any job."
there we go. the Warhol wisdom there.
Yeah,
So did it come easy? Was it easy to pick up?
I guess.
Yeah.
because we might have played out like 2 years maybe,
Okay.
and it might have only been 6 or 7 or maybe 6 months before that I learned everything.
Okay. And like you guys were playing with like Lucky Pierre, and I would see that name a lot with
Yeah.
Rapid Eye Movement. So was that like were you fans of them or aware of their
Oh yeah.
music? Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
they were like the dance band in Cleveland, along with a whole lot of other ones, and we would play in Kent.
Okay.
We'd play in Akron. JB's, I think, was in.
Okay. In Kent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was fun, and we played down the flats,
Yeah. Okay.
but it was just totally all bar stuff. We never cut a record or anything.
There's
Although-
that. So okay. So there's no. Is that the only recording? That one tune?
Oh no, there's other recordings.
Okay. Because I want to hear those.
Yeah.
There you go.
We like when I found that that one you put on YouTube. I was like, oh my god, this song's so cool. This is so awesome. And I showed it to Hope. I picked her up from rehearsal where she's playing bass in like a similar situation, and like we were both freaking out, like, whoa, this is so sick.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, there are more. Yeah, so
Okay.
we'll have to get the cassette player out though.
So let's put a pin in that. We'll come back to that later because
Okay.
that song's so awesome. So it goes on for 2 years, and does it just fade out? Like, was there plans
Yeah.
of a record, plan of a tour, or more, or was
I
it just
don't
a fun
quite
thing?
know why it ended.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
I know that I started like just doing little projects with other bands in Cleveland, and
Okay.
we would do this and that. And I don't really know why.
Who else were you picking up projects with?
I did do some things with Lucky Pierre,
Okay, cool.
and then the YOYOs.
Okay,
I mean,
Cool.
just little tiny bands that were, they wanted to just do something different. So.
yeah.
People like Steve Freeg and Chucky Ellis they did a lot of different projects.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
Musical.
yeah. Like Lucky Pierre is an interesting group. I forget what record we were listening to, but it was all over the
It
place
has that
musically.
yellow cover.
Yeah. That one wasn't quite a dance record. It was just like wild tunage.
yeah,
It was really cool.
Kevin wrote really cool stuff too, and everybody in that band was really a good musician.
Kevin McMahon, and then he later did a project with Trent Reznor
Yeah.
and
Oh,
Nine
yeah?
Inch Nails.
Okay.
Yeah, and
I think that was Prick.
Okay. That's cool.
yeah.
So was the music scene at that time similar to what you were experiencing in the visual art scene or visual art group? Like the music groups you were working with in the kind of community?
That was like 80, like maybe 80 to 83 or 84.
Okay.
So that would have been like Talking Heads, and is that what you mean?
Well, I mean the Cleveland community.
Oh.
Here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
There-
yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that was in Cleveland around then was pretty much all original music. There was really no like copy bands.
Yeah.
Well, there were some, but they weren't the ones that.
No, but there were a lot of original. The Wild Giraffes.
Yeah.
For me, as being really on the periphery as the roadie, it seems to me that the music scene was much more vibrant
Yeah.
than the art scene at that time.
In
Okay.
Cleveland. Yeah.
Was it like a groups kind of going around getting into each other's like supportive, vibrant, or was it more
Oh,
just
yeah.
like
I think it was all
blossoming with a
supportive.
bunch of different things?
I think everybody was pretty
Yeah,
supportive.
most of the people I remember from that time were supportive.
Yeah, I mean, it just was, let's go to a bar and dance and have fun and get a good band, that was original.
That's cool.
I mean, and
Yeah.
that could have been, that was like life for 3, 4, 5 years.
That's awesome. So was there any crossover with like visual projects with other groups as well? Where they're like, hey, can you do our album cover, Laura? Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, not a lot, but Well, I did the one that I wrote a song for. I should give that one to you too. That's,
Yeah. I want to hear that. Vinyl? Okay.
Yeah. Called Romantic Lies.
Yeah.
And I would do I would do all of our flyers,
Okay.
and posters and.
So you're dragging a big end here. You're doing all the posters. You got the roadie. You got the car. You got the rehearsal place.
That's because I had the computer, yeah. Well, and I am kind of a workaholic too, so it's, we both like to be busy all the time.
And I guess, so when you're doing your own thing and it's something you love doing, that break of like, this is a thing I enjoy doing to a thing to work that is a fine line. Like at least I find that for myself is like I love to do all these things, but it's also work. And where's the stopping point? I don't quite know. You know what I mean?
Ours kind of all blended because we were working on making money, but I was working in the house.
Yeah.
You were pretty much
Part-time in a bookstore, usually.
part-time,
Okay.
yeah, very, very part-time, or else you were teaching at Virginia Marty, or else you were doing comic books with people, and that was paying you. And that was paying, the police were paying me. Greater Cleveland Peace Officers Memorial Society was paying
Right.
me. And any other little jobs I could get, graphic arts,
Right.
working with a lot of animal organizations, just doing things for their newsletters,
Yeah.
and just little kooky stuff. All the while painting, drawing. So everything was a mismatch.
Okay. That's where that
Yeah,
that
there
kind of
really
like
was no.
endless work blade. Like you're like, oh, I got 2 hours to do nothing. I should do the animal
And
thing. Like, you know what I mean?
We were very, very lucky that everything like that just happened. But
Yeah.
again, we never said no to any job, and we always made our deadlines, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Because artists are known for
Not doing such.
yeah, and no, we always met our deadlines, and we were reasonable. We didn't charge a lot of money to do things because we didn't really think that we just need
Yeah.
And we were lucky to be able to have gotten a house,
Right.
and
So having like a kind of a HQ,
it kind of all.
yeah, panned out. But also, it's just I imagine are you guys very scheduled?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so that's the key right there, is like the scheduling, the doing nothing time, and the you must be doing this, get that done. Like
No, I'm like a perfect putzer. If I don't have something to do, I find something to do.
I relate
we're
to
not
that.
Really, yeah, we're not really good at sitting.
yeah,
For instance, you guys were coming over today, which is great. But after breakfast, I said to Laura, well, I got a little bit of time. I'm going to work on that project for music makers. So I went up and I inputted some of the copy, since I'm writing that job. I input that and I formatted it a little, and I discussed with Laura a little bit about an idea of how to approach the piece. So yeah, if there's even a small increment of time and I'm feeling at all ambitious, I'll do it.
okay, all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also relate to that. Like,
We don't. Yeah, we don't
this is
really
hitting home.
waste time. And after dinner, that's when I'll sit here and
Yeah.
I've had like a few beers, and then I'll watch a little bit of TV and conk out.
Yeah.
But then I'm up at like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning and going until dinner's done.
But so schedule important, and like, is that something that came naturally to you guys? Okay.
I think so, because my mother was like always saying, "You can just do stuff by yourself.
Yeah.
How come you can be happy just doing stuff by yourself?" Well, I don't know. I'm a putzer.
Yeah.
And he has to be in his studio. We eat breakfast. He comes down and has lunch. I don't usually have lunch.
Yeah.
Then I make dinner. We have dinner, and watch a little TV after dinner, and then go to bed early usually. Or else you might sometimes go back in your studio and do some, work.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. So, all right, that makes sense. That makes sense.
That's work, work, work.
Yeah, yeah.
But fun, fun, fun.
But the kind of so going from the music and playing it, and kind of going back to Harvey, he would write for Music Maker, right? And
He
then
started out
right.
with Music Maker. He wrote the first two, and again, it was a situation that was echoed then later in his life. Because after we did the second one, he said to me, "You know, man, this gig don't pay very much. I don't think I can do it anymore." And I was feeling overly ambitious that day. And I said to him, "Well, would you mind if I take a try at it?" He goes, "No, man, go for it." And so since I've been doing it ever since.
Okay.
Harvey was a hustler.
Yeah.
He really,
Yeah.
he had his focus, and he wanted, to make enough to do what he wanted to do. So he never had, he never had downtime either. Harvey
Yeah.
was always.
So okay. So from that, I had a couple questions with the Music Maker. Now you're doing all the research for it, right?
I am fortunate. I mean, yes and no.
Okay.
I'm fortunate in that if the folks at Music Maker, Tim Duffy and others, if they have some material that they've either written themselves or since this is a person that they're sort of, I don't want to say sponsoring because they don't sponsor everybody.
Right.
But for the folks that they work with, if there's some other source material, they'll send it to me as grist for my writing mill.
Okay. Okay. So you'll either get like, hey, say this, or find your own.
Yeah.
Okay.
If there's been times in the past when I've had to dig.
And then they sign off on it, and you
Yeah.
just go.
Then I send
Go to
them a
town.
rough with whatever copy I've written.
Okay.
And they say yay or nay. Usually yay.
So kind of going through this side hustle here, what have you found through a Music Maker that you've enjoyed that maybe you thought you wouldn't have enjoyed? Or like, has there been any artists that you've been like, oh, I like this now, or she's awesome, or like,
I can honestly say that I found at least a little something to like with everybody. You know,
Okay.
like maybe just a song. There's the person that I'm working on currently is Martha Spencer, and she's a bluegrass artist, and she's pretty darn cool because she comes out of a Appalachian tradition that's, mountain roots music, and she's got a very crystal clear voice. She plays guitar and fiddle and bass,
Wow.
and is a singer-songwriter. Everybody isn't
Yeah.
that versatile, but they particularly wanted me to get her done pretty quick because it's Women's Month coming up, so
Right.
they want to push that aspect too.
that's cool. That's cool. And I gotta imagine when you're portraying somebody, you gotta find some redeeming quality. You're like, yeah, well, I like, like you gotta find something you like within them to like to express it.
Absolutely, and some, I have to admit, Music Maker has given me an incredible latitude in my approach to doing it because I've done some that are very realistic / naturalistic, and then I've done others that are more like caricatures.
Right.
And they've had no problem with any of the approaches.
That's cool. That's cool. So I guess kind of going off that with like research into a project, like if we take Tunnel of Hell or a Fire on the Water, or
Yeah, you got it right.
Okay. I was like, I nailed it. Nice. I knew I was gonna mess up some title somewhere, but it wasn't that one. But when it goes into like researching and bringing to life the story that there isn't really pictures of, like kind of is author notes that are kind of like aiding you towards what this character should kind of look like?
Well, let's put it this way. Scott McGregor, besides being a good writer, understands because he loves movies. So not only will he put what the text is and the dialogue, but he will put camera directions.
Oh, nice.
Now, I do not always follow the camera directions, but generally we can discuss why I want to change something.
Yeah.
And almost all the time, Scott said, yeah, do it that way.
Okay. But I mean, as far as like bringing these people to life, do you have a process to kind of like look back and like research characters from that time?
I love history. So the fact is, okay, I love history and I like seeing other people's work and I love bringing in images and trying to, if not memorize them, at least generally keep them in my brain pan. So when it came to this project, for the technical stuff, Scott did that because he wanted to get it right. But in terms of the characters, the way they're dressed, etc., I already had ideas and did little drawings for that so that Scott would give approval.
Okay.
So it's a collaboration.
And Garrett Morgan was in there, and you know what he looks like because he was the
Well,
one person.
Yeah.
Yes, but the idea originally was not to make it Garrett Morgan in order that there be no problem with his living relatives.
Okay,
Right.
fix that.
Okay, well, no, it's fine. I don't think it's... But still, just to have, like, that, like, visual... Like, because also with, like, there was the few page in the Beats with D.A. Levy, and, like, taking, like... So there's these stories I noticed, like, you have a very interesting, like, body of work that's, like Snark, right? Which is a new one you guys been doing together. And, like, I think, how far is the third one? Is that out, done, in progress?
No, it's not, but I haven't even told the author, Bruce Olive Solheim, this yet.
Okay.
But I've already done roughs for the whole book.
Nice.
They're up on the wall in my studio room. So he said sometime in 2024 we'll be doing that. But I thought I'd get ahead of the curve because I had a little extra time.
Nice.
And when he has a little extra time, he finds some way to fill it. That's going to be productive in the future, you know. Yeah.
Right. No, when you're doing this, what you're doing, you know what you need to do down the line as well. Yeah. So if you can step it forward, I totally get that. But I read in his author notes in volume 2, like you could tell he really loves this project. He's really passionate about Snark, so that's cool.
Oh, absolutely.
But I guess I bring that up. So you have like a superhero story, and then you have very research stories, and then you have like Harvey's like autobiographical stories, and then like the random gigs that like he's like thrown your way. Like, so when it comes, I guess I'm trying to formulate my question a little better. But with all these different like hats, right? And like how. Is there a different approach to a character? There has to be, but like, is there a different approach as far as like researching like a superhero? Are you going to drag from like Jack Kirby influences? And I guess he's kind of more of like Kirby's kind of in everything with comics, I feel like in general in the world. But like as far as like approaching like coming up with like a layout and a thumbnail for a Snark compared to like a more historical research based one.
Well, that is a good question, but the thread that runs so true through all of them is I'd like to lay out a page that's interesting to me as a comic reader.
Okay.
So if I can do something that doesn't necessarily have a standard 6-panel layout on a page, something where a panel forces you by its shape to go to the next panel, or forces you by dint of whatever the characters are doing to move your eye along the page. I opt for that whenever I can.
Plus, I think Gary's work is so distinctively Gary's work.
Right.
And it is in a style that can go science fiction or can go historic, or it's just good, solidly drawn artwork.
Right.
And the way he does it in his layouts, I think that's what like puts it in a different category.
Okay.
You know what
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's one thing
because his stuff always looks the same to me.
Right.
There's people that go, oh, that's a Gary Dumm.
Yeah.
So, but the story, it's just, I guess, how he attacks the layout.
Gotcha. Because like when I was getting ready to talk with you, I was flipping through. I got that big American Splendor anthology. And Show and Hope. I'm like, that's Gary. Because you brought this up last time when we were hanging out. Like you have this very confident, solid character. Like draw. Like I can tell. It seems very. What's the word I'm looking for? Very purposely put, and very distinct and sure of what it wants to say. And like I'm sure you could be like, "Wow, it took forever to get there," and I believe it. But the end results from what I've flipping through all these different books I've been reading, it's very, very sincere in what it's trying to say.
And maybe that's the key. Like his work is very honest, and he's not trying to be another comic book artist.
Yeah.
He's just being Gary.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that all around. But as to whether I'm there yet, I don't know.
Well, and I think I think that's the most inspiring bit is like knowing that there's more to find and trying to find these new things. Like when you were showing me around your office, how you had Extremity on there, Daniel Warren Johnson. I was like, that's a cool, that's such a cool read and a new wild, like kind of under the radar book. So it's so cool. That's the endless scratch, right? That
I'm looking for shit to steal. It doesn't always show up as obviously because you're right. I don't really try to imitate somebody else. I'm not trying to, except maybe I've done a series over the years that is ongoing. I call them my unreal comics covers.
Yeah.
Because they're covers to comics that don't exist, that I wish existed. And sometimes within that context, I will ape somebody else's style in order to get the import across to the viewer. Because it's me, but it ain't me.
But yeah, well, in that case, it's taking those abilities, and it's still like because I have one of them, and it still looks like you. You know what I mean? Even though the style may become different, it still has it's like if James Brown sang Adele, it's gonna sound like James Brown, even though it's Adele.
Well, I really appreciate that. Because as you know, the way my voice is now, I'm much closer to James Brown than Adele.
I guess, and another comment on layout, flipping through American Splendor issues. There's a really interesting layout, and I wonder if this is your choice or Harvey's choice, that will have a story read from the top of the page going all the way across. Right, and then kind of like that, in stripes going from left to right.
If I don't know which exactly you're talking about, but if you're talking about stories with double-page spreads, that's generally me talking with Joe Zabel and Joe implementing the layout, because Joe really, sometimes I think I'm fairly out there. Joe can do some really off-the-wall layouts, and particularly in those double-page spreads that he was doing, I think in the 80s, maybe early 90s, I found them really great.
Did you meet Joe through working with Harvey?
Well, in a bass-backwards way. I was working part-time in a comic store called Collector's Warehouse, and Joe came in, and I don't exactly recall how we realized that we both were artists, and but we did so. And Joe brought in some of his work, and he had already been familiar with my work. And I said, why don't you talk with Harvey? I bet you could get some work. And he did. And Harvey said, yeah. Did you want to work with Gary too? And Joe said, sure, that'd be fine.
Okay.
So that's how we got started.
Gotcha. And that must have been a collaboration that flowed pretty smoothly, because then like with Bulletproof, reading that book, like that's a pretty dense story, like as far as like the amount of information that is conveyed in that one issue.
Well, Joe, like myself, we do both like mysteries, and I may like, some of the more hard-boiled stuff than he does, but we both like mystery stuff.
Okay, so I guess with that Bulletproof in particular, there's that one page that has like the hours going by, and you see the clocks do like this. Was that a Joe idea, or was that a you idea?
Joe.
Okay. So I guess another thing to pull from like working with Harvey, when you are paired up with other artists, like what were some kind of like general ideas you found yourself taking for yourself from? So if layouts were one from Joe, is like, and I mean, I maybe not taking, let's say inspired from, or swiping, whatever,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah, you could put it in as nice or as not nice way as you'd like.
Learning
from, well, and because when you're working with someone like that, if it's playing in a band with somebody and you're like, oh, they really phrase minor third chords differently, like I like that, like that's something I do. I like how Joe Rangel does that. Like fill in the blank. But like, so I guess, is there a couple other highlights from artists you worked with who also worked in American Splendor stuff that you still find yourself kind of utilizing in like stuff now?
Well, that is another good question. I would have to honestly say that anything of that has happened has by and large been subconsciously subsumed into my bag of tricks.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, overtly, the kind of stuff like what you were saying, mainly about Joe's stuff, is certainly at the time, I would go, wow, I wish I'd thought of that. But other than that, unless there was, again, some place where you could sort of steal whole cloth,
Yeah.
some kind of imagery, it's got to be just stuff that slipped in.
Okay. And I guess like on your end, also working with the American Splendor stuff too, taking like layouts like that, did you find that relay itself in paintings and such?
No.
Okay.
No, I've always been quite particular as to what I wanted to paint and what I didn't want to paint. And at that point, the painting never entered into
Gotcha.
this working relationship. That was just my thing.
Okay.
Until we started doing the environmental stuff.
And even with the environmental stuff, I mean, the fruit of having done these works, which I'm very proud of, the fact of the matter is, I could not come up with ideas that matched Laura's original concept of what she wanted to do. And so these works that you see actually are sort of a default position that she was willing to take.
Yeah. And I'm happy we did.
Yeah.
And then there's always the fact that I think I can safely say this without having something thrown at me, that there are a number of works that I did as black and white pen and ink works that Laura goes, nah, I ain't gonna do that. So it has to spark something inside of her, because once the black and white work has been sketched onto the canvas, it doesn't end there. When Laura comes up with something that she wants to add to it, she will ask what I think of the idea. But in general, I think it's a foregone conclusion that she wants to do that.
Yeah.
So unless I think it's really a horrible idea, I say yes.
Well, and the fact of the matter is that they took me so long to do each one, because I just take forever.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spend like a whole month on something that I hate. So when you come up with a great idea,
Makes
yeah.
sense to me.
Yeah. But so there's this communication thing that I think is key for any collaborative endeavor, right? And I guess so to kind of stem off that, was this like communication skills that you learned from individually doing your own projects involving other people?
I think he's taught me more about,
Yeah.
communication skills than I kind of live in my head sometimes.
Gotcha.
And he's a little bit more well-rounded.
So you can see that it's possible for an introvert to become extroverted.
There, which are the steps? All
But we
right.
don't have to always be out there,
Yeah.
We're extroverted in our work
Yeah.
and who we're working with, but they don't have to be here
Right. Right.
in our face.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
There was one thing I was trying to like look in more into it, but I couldn't really find anything. You did some work with like DC and Dark Horse.
They were associated with American Splendor in both those
okay.
cases because Dark Horse took over
Right, and they started.
for after Harvey stopped self-publishing. I'm trying to, I don't know exactly how that happened, but it seems to me as a surmise, they must have come to Harvey and said, look, we'll take the load off you of having to worry about getting distribution and all that stuff if you can continue to package American Splendor. So I think that's Dark Horse. DC was a similar thing and was, I have to say, a much better paying gig than Dark Horse was. And I was happy to be a part of that because they branched out, bringing in other artists even further afield
Okay.
than just the folks that Harvey had gathered.
Gotcha. So with that, was there like an artist that you were a fan of that you got to work with because of that?
No,
No,
not
just-
at all. I got to work with Greg Budget again. So that had been after a period where Greg had not been doing anything American Splendor for a long time. So I was happy with that.
That's cool. Okay, so while that's going on, and that's going like, as you're doing Harvey stuff, are you in like because was Bulletproof was going on, like, so you're taking all these other side comics too, and at that point, were you doing the pattern drawings? Like, I'm trying to piece together where these two projects or where you two are working at this kind of moment.
Well, some of that was utterly independent.
Gotcha.
And in 2008 was when I ended up in the hospital with the
Yeah.
not being able to breathe. So I retired the graphic arts business.
Gotcha.
So then, from then on in, it was I just painted.
Okay.
So I think that the quilting paintings or the pattern pieces were the first thing that I did. No. Again, it was just a bunch of
Gigs?
this and that.
Yeah. So kind of dialing back like that, did it become more stuff you wanted to do more than gigs that just popped up, or did gigs
Right
just
then,
keep
I
popping?
didn't really have any gigs.
Okay, so this was stuff you
know,
wanted to do. It
This
was just
this
bouncing
was just
everywhere.
me being an artist in my house
Gotcha.
and doing whatever the heck I wanted to
Yeah,
do.
that was a nice period.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, well, truthfully, a little confession, I decided that I wanted to work on paintings with him
Yeah.
because I thought his name might get me into galleries more than my name,
I, yeah.
And Yeah.
Was it a dumb idea?
All of our ideas are dumb ideas. So that was one reason why I wanted to do the environmental pieces.
Right.
Was strictly because I thought, okay, you got both Dumms here.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to have a great, and the shows that we did with these paintings really did very well.
Well, these paintings are incredible, and I kind of want to. So this all started from the first one, which was the shame blame game, right? The board game.
Yeah, we were doing, yeah. Oh, I know. We ran across a gallery in
Okay.
Lakewood, Breakneck Gallery.
Okay.
When we went in to introduce ourselves, the fella there, Sean,
John
said,
Burns.
Burns. Okay.
he says, I know you guys. He says, whatever you want to do, you can do.
Cool.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
You know, because and so we worked with them until they closed in 2018, maybe? No. It must have been 2015.
I do not remember.
Yeah, because we could have the best shows there. And any kind of cockamamie idea we would come up with in our head, they would just sign off and say, sure, do it. And that's the kind of place an artist wants to have.
Right.
You know, so I think maybe they spoiled us for the rest of the galleries in Cleveland, which we've got a lot of really great galleries in Cleveland, but they didn't really want to give you that carte blanche. You know,
Right.
they didn't. They had rules.
Okay, so you guys get in there, and that's when the collaborative paintings start. Is that when the ideas start cooking for these?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that Fame, Shame, Blame game was that whole concept was Gary's idea. And then that was the board games and just social issue things that, you know, we were just ticked off being artists, you know, and you get all snooty sometimes, you know, and we just wanted to, like, over-prescribing medications.
Right.
And, you know, but we'd put them to a game
Right.
that we remembered in our childhood. So that one was fun. We even had games made of the paintings that the people could sit in the opening and play the games.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was fun. But, and then from there, I wanted to go into pesticides and the environment. That was the idea I asked Gary to do. And he could not come up with anything with what my specifications were.
I did sketches, but
Yeah. So,
they weren't it.
yeah. So when he came up with the monsters idea, that sort of made sense to me. That was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was a spin-off because what Laura wanted to show was the regular insect, the way it looks, and then a mutation of that insect. And it just...
I wanted to
wasn't
do a
happening.
split screen down the face.
Yeah.
This would be the real, you know, one side would be the real,
And the other side would be the.
would be a really monstrous. Maybe I said monstrous and you went monster. So, yeah, that's,
I'd say yes.
you know, because all of the monsters in the paintings are actually our childhood, you know, loves kind of, because we
Right.
love seeing those movies when we were kids, and that opens the door to a lot of things when people see the paintings. It's like, I relate to Frankenstein.
Right.
Oh, but now there's smokestacks coming out of his head, you know?
Yeah.
And then they start talking, and they start a conversation with each other about the issue, and it just helps get that issue out.
Right, which we talked a little bit about last time, but it's like it's such a non like kind of preachy way to
Right.
like, hey, there's this horrible thing going on, and you're thinking like you got the familiar face and you got the issue behind it, and you're relating like how all these paintings are laid out are really like an expert way, and like I would like to maybe point out maybe it's telling the story as if a comic would, but instead of multiple panels, it's one panel.
And Gary always said that these were what?
They're painted political cartoons.
Yeah,
So
large painted
Yeah.
political cartoons.
but it got people talking, and it's not confrontational as much as it is enlightening. So that's
hope
what's so inspiring about these set of paintings.
Yeah.
Well, that was part of the intention of having something or things that was at least slightly humorous.
Yeah.
So that the bitter pill of enlightening goes down easier.
So I guess I kind of branching back to like you guys, and from one of the paintings, I don't know if you want to talk about that you're working on, that you're thumbnailing with a swirly shit toilet shit.
Yeah,
But from like after we were talking about that and like how it came from a friend, right? It was
it's another wacky kind of thing.
Right.
She messaged me and said, I don't know why, but I just wanted to show you guys this. My drawings aren't very good, but I thought it was funny, and maybe someday I'd get to work with you guys or something like that. And I just wrote her back, and I said, well, hey, yeah, it's funny. I'll show Gary and see like if he's got any ideas or whatever. Oh, well, of course he has ideas, So he took it, and she's thrilled. Because I think that's kind of why she showed it to us,
right?
But she's really happy, and I did do a little bit of coloring on it last week or the week before, and I haven't sent it to her yet to show her.
Oh,
but
that's exciting.
Gary took over, and he did a really cool drawing, and I made it look cool too. And
what was the actual name of the painting? I totally got it wrong.
No,
it's not shit.
Life's.
It doesn't have an official name yet.
So maybe.
I wouldn't recommend it.
But it's a takeoff, at least in my mind, of a Bosch painting, Hieronymus Bosch. The Garden of Earthly Delights, which, if that were the title, is certainly more than ironic, because the aspect that I took from Val Seeley's idea was that we're living in a world of shit, and so in the center of it is a sort of whirlpool with little people being sucked down into that, and there are 3 gigantic asses that are creating the shit that the people are having to live with. But my spin on it was that even in a world of shit, a person who, dare I say, has their shit together can still have a good time amidst the shit. So there are little people amongst those that are being sucked down and suffering who are
Partying.
They're partying, they're jumping in the shit. They are
Swimming.
surfing on the shit. So there's all manner of things that can be done in a world of suffering and shit.
That's interesting. Yeah, it sort of is like make the lemonade out of lemons.
And that kind of, I mean, at this point now, I imagine you guys get a lot of pitches for things, and I imagine like aside from taking a gig for a gig's sake, like make some dough, is there projects that kind of enlighten you more to be like, oh, I got this idea right? Like, what is there like kind of a process? Is there like because when I look through all the works that I have before here, like they're either like rich in historical like facts, or they're telling this narrative, or they're having like this kind of like light-hearted political, like, or not political, but like the hidden insights, right? And like, so there's a very like, it's not just, you guys don't just do whatever, but you're doing like these very, it seems like very particularly picked out stories and like works. And like, I wanted to know, is there a thought behind, is there stuff that you say no to, or do you seek kind of projects like this?
You know what? I don't think that we do ever say no to anything. I'm serious.
Yeah.
And I think that especially he sees worth in everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I don't think you have ever said, but he's going to now remember something he said no
I
to.
said no to that.
I'm not gonna make you out to be a liar because there are some things that get pitched that I do say no to, that there's no reason for you to even hear about.
Well, there you go. I
But
didn't know
they've
about it.
mainly been graphic novels.
Gotcha.
Oh, I know that.
I spent 4 years with a little break for cancer on doing Fire on the Water. So I know what a graphic novel entails.
Right.
How much work and time. And time is becoming more precious to me. The idea of doing something like Val did, The Garden of Earthly Non-Delights, struck me as something that I could, again, put my own little personal spin on
Yeah.
to make a little bit of a statement. I mean, it's not a major piece, but in somebody's life, if they see it, maybe it'll help them.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can never tell about stuff like that. But I guess what I'm getting to is, if you have something you want to pitch me, keep it short.
The email's listed below. Subject, title, short. But no, I just, because like flipping through all these books, getting ready to talk with you guys, I'm like, there's kind of a through line of these like really like thought out like stories that you're working and collaborating with, that they're not just normal stories that I found it very interesting because I seeing how much goes into just in the music, but like working with Gotti and like just seeing how much goes into a visual display of anything requires a lot of time, thought, effort, and passion. So like that what I think what you just said right there kind of caps what you guys are really moved with to do.
Let's put it this way. Stuff comes in through the eyes. And a lot of times, what happens is there's a reaction in the brain. But the stuff that I like comes in through the eyes and goes to the heart and then to the brain. And the brain can think about what it was that struck you in the heart. And for me, that's a little more important.
I think that's well said.
He does that very well.
Because on that topic, like I found it very interesting. Like in certain interviews, you brought up how the brain processes comics and like how impactful that is. Like, is this anything at all? I imagine this is a retrospective thought process, but with drawing and laying out stuff, aside from what hits the heart, like, is this a kind of thing you knew from the beginning, or is this just like something that from years of experience makes more sense?
No, I think particularly the mechanics of it is something learned. I think it's something that most any artist interested in comics can learn. In terms of what's going to affect the heart, you got to figure that out for yourself.
Awesome. Well, you guys, thank you so much for chatting with me, and like thank you so much for letting me and Hope come in like a week before and hang out and see what you get. This has been super delightful.
A pleasure.
We left super ecstatic last time, and I'm sure we will this time.
We've been talking about it the whole.
I know,
over the whole time we haven't seen you.
Well, we've enjoyed it a lot.
So
Yeah,
thank you guys
so you
so
don't
much.
have to be strangers, now you're friends.
There you go.
Well, now you get to, now we'll be sending invites. Do you guys have anything else to like kind of like plug that's going on? Like, I know Snark 3 is in the future.
It's in the works.
You guys also have an art show coming up. Weren't you were making the book for it last time I was here?
That was for the kids.
That was
Not an
Yeah.
art show. This is just going to be. It's like a
It's called Kids Comic Convention.
Yeah.
Okay.
They've been doing it for 10 or 12 years. I participated on Zoom during COVID one year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're actually going to have a little group of kids that will be the same as what we're doing with you, just
Yeah.
kind of telling them, like, well, you can be an artist, and this is sort of try to be a little inspirational,
Yes,
maybe.
we'll
or-
be trying to manipulate their minuscule minds.
But yeah, I wanted to do the little booklets,
Yeah.
so that I could pass them around and say, because every kid's got a computer now, so maybe if they wanted to. And remember ages ago when they used to do what did they call them? Those little books that are comic people would do.
Zines.
No, they would like a garbage can books or
Ash can.
ash can books, yeah. And that was when the computers finally were out and they could do their own and pass them around, and they didn't have to rely on a printer or, a big printer.
Right.
They had their own little printer.
So is this an open thing, or do you guys sign up, and when is it, and where is it?
I think,
Oh, we had to sign up. It's at the Pivot Center on West 25th.
Okay. But as far as anyone who wanted to
No.
come, they can just show up?
no, I
Okay,
don't
okay.
think that it's like a real convention. This is sort of like, well, I might be wrong.
Well, it is in that there will be an artist's alley where they will have a number of people there. I've opted not to participate in that part. I'm more interested in doing, giving the talk. And as Laura said, trying to inspire a little bit.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Because it seems like we'll have a small group of
Yeah.
kids from, I think that they said middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's not going to be like a whole room full of people.
Right.
And I think that this is basically for the kids.
That's cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's super awesome. I do have one more question I remembered before we wrap it up here. When it comes to like working with someone else and writing your own like comic, as far as like laying out this, do you find that process more like, I'm thinking like A-Man, there was some stuff that was mostly like that you wrote out and illustrated. And is that easier? Is there a difference to you? Do you enjoy like being able to do your whole thing completely? And do you have some projects like that you'd like to do?
Well, in actuality, I think I generally like working with somebody else, but as of late, because it is getting late, I've been trying to do more writing. I just haven't brought anything finished out, but I've got, as Laura can tell you, in our notes, I've got a number of stories, both outlined and with parts fully written. I find it, because of having done drawing for 60 years, it's much easier to sit down and just draw. When I sit down and try to write,
Yeah.
it's work.
That's exciting though.
Oh, I
What,
think
when
so.
you sit
That's
down
cool.
and write, it's work?
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was more fun for you to write. No.
I'm trying to get it to be more fun because I think ultimately, if I were to live another 20 years, I'm going to lose a step or two being able to draw. But I should be able to do the little finger movements that allow me to write.
I don't know. You always say that, but I don't think that you've really. I don't think that you're getting sloppy.
I'm not sloppy. I just have seen where I'm a little shaky.
I don't know.
No steps missed.
Well, I haven't missed a step yet and fallen down the stairs, if that's what you mean.
No, I think you're still doing.
I think you both are still killing it.
Yeah.
You guys, like, from just how involved you are with everything and all these projects, and just like the willingness to let us come in and hang out and pick your guys' brains, I think speaks very highly of,
thank you.
both of you. So thank you guys again for this.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you.
very welcome, and it's great to have you over.
All right, with that, friends, let's hope you were going to say something and I cut you off.
Well, I was just going to ask what you like to write about.
Oh, yeah.
Generally in the Stephen King vein. I like horror.
Cool. That's awesome.
That's sick. Yeah.
Be careful. I'll get your email address and send you something.
Oh yeah.
Hope's a good
I-
editor. She edits all my emails. The only reason I sound presentable is
And, like,
because she made it sound.
One of my favorite things about writing is getting the feedback. Like I love playwriting because you do live workshops, and a lot of the time when you do live workshops, you just give it to the person right then, and their first impression is, the feedback they give you. But that's like kind of similar to what you do with an audience. The audience doesn't get the script in advance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, unless they hang out with each other.
Yeah.
I got this pitch for this book that's at the library. All right, I'm gonna turn this off, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig of the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.